Hello, Sarah and Grant. Welcome back to the Rev Up Health podcast.
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, we're super excited to talk about peptides today.
Yeah.
It
is a big buzz that we are hearing more and more about. So we're excited for this one.
Okay,
great.
Yeah,
a lot of information out there, a lot of false information, but yet, there are myths out there also that exist. So it's certainly, hopefully, something we can maybe shed a little light on and let people know that it's a tool. It's okay. It's something that's going to help you bridge a gap.
Yeah.
So for sure.
So I think people are coming to us and talking about peptides, but I think we should just back up just a little bit, and maybe you can explain to us just what is a peptide and what is the intended purpose?
Yeah, peptides are, for starters, we've got thousands of peptides in our body now. So it's not a foreign substance. It's not something that's not that we don't already have in our system. So basically, you can just think of it just a bunch of proteins. You can almost think of these that proteins are made up of amino acids, and you can think of them as a chain with a bunch of different links on them. So the peptides are such where most of those occur where we're having between 2 to 50 of those amino acids in that chain, and that creates a peptide. So they differ from hormones. Hormones are cholesterol driven. Peptides are amino acid driven. So they're just chains of amino acids put together. And so what happens, and you can think of this chain, I like to think of peptides as like a cogs on a key. There's different little cogs on the key that open a lock. The difference with these keys is that they control many functions. They're neuromodulators. They create different functions throughout our body. So a peptide won't necessarily do one thing. I think they've suggested they can even do anything from 4 things, literally, I don't know who counted that, but 4 things all the way up to thousands of things. And they control literally hundreds of thousands of processes within our body. So they'll turn on or turn off or upregulate or downregulate processes depending upon what that specific peptide is formulated to do. Yeah. So, but that's kind of the basics behind that.
Okay. Yeah. And so the big one that we're hearing about obviously is the GLP-1s, 2s, these other like weight loss types. So like when you say upregulate and downregulate, what is essentially the GLP-1s upregulating, downregulating? What's kind of what's that process?
But here you can even think of even insulin as a peptide. GLP-1s, insulin's a peptide. So these things are basically upregulating our body's ability to have a better control over our insulin levels, essentially, you can think of. So we're kind of upregulating. It really is, it's the best way to think of a GLP-1 is kind of an appetite control peptide. That's kind of the best way to look at that, because it will not only upregulate our pancreas to produce insulin, but it downregulates glucagon production, which is what the liver utilizes to produce glucose. And so it also affects our brain. So there are GLP-1 receptors in our brain. So remember I said that these things have multiple different points of contact and control to modulate different things in our systems. And so that's what it also does. So it curbs that appetite. It not only does it also slows down our GI tract. So that creates a certain amount of satiety for us to where we just don't feel hungry. So we're full. So our stomach, our GI, our gastrointestinal system just does not empty. So it has multiple things that it will do like that. And that's how it controls the appetite.
That's good. Yeah. I think one of the things that we kind of circle around and question is, the pros and cons as it relates to specifically the GLP-1, just because everything is customizable. So meaning we know there's pros and cons to it, what you just mentioned, but some of that also is around what works for each person. So there's, the thing with peptides is there's so many questions because it's customizable to each person and what dosage to work with and what's going to work
Literally.
for them. So I think, maybe you could help us, think through that just a little bit. And how do you guys look at customizing those peptides for individuals so that they do have a positive experience?
Yeah, I think that is a key. And also knowing that just because this peptide works for one person really well, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you really well or for me really well.
Or your dose may be different than my dose to get that same response, or maybe I have more side effects. I have more constipation problems, or I have more nausea related to that same dose, and you do fine. And why?
Yeah.
You just do. So, but that's where the benefits of modifying the dosages help a lot. And there are a lot of difference in dosages.
And I think one thing just to note that we've actually seen is that, when you're getting a GLP-1 through the regular pharmacy and, working with your primary care doctor, they are kind of on a protocol of you need to increase the dose. And now you need to increase the dose. Even when you were seeing results at a lower dose, the protocol is you keep increasing.
Yeah.
So,
because that's what the insurance needs to be able to provide that product for you.
Yeah.
So it's not always the best thing for the patient, but it's a way that pharmaceutical company can generate a profit.
Yeah. So for somebody that would come to you guys, maybe that has been doing it, because that's probably the problem that I run into. I have people that they hit that wall of not feeling great, and then I'm trying to advise them like, hey, everybody's a little bit different and specialized. Go back or talk to your physician about maybe lowering your dose back down. What do you guys recommend when you have somebody that come in like that, or like what would be a suggestion maybe for us? Like, hey, when someone comes to us, they were on this dose, they've done their ramp up, and now all of a sudden they're having all these weird side effects, sulfur burps, all those things. Is there something that you guys say, hey, I hate to say get away from your physician for that thing, right? So I don't ever recommend that because that's not my area, but it's like, hey, try to talk to your physician and back it down. So like, what do you guys usually do when someone comes to you? Maybe they're too high of a dose and having negative side effects. What do you guys do?
Well, I mean, that is where it gets a little sticky, especially right now, because we're going through this time where compounding pharmacies aren't as able to work with providers and changing these doses. When it is possible, come back down in dose. Don't stay at that high dose. Let's get you at the smallest dose that you need to still be either maintaining or, seeing some slow but steady results. And that does get a little tricky because for those folks who are getting it through their insurance company, insurance isn't going to approve it, if they're not increasing their dose.
And some of the big issues I think that, you guys are fully aware of it, but I think a lot of folks that don't understand is the fact that, like we spoke about, this is a tool to maybe initiate a control over your appetite and to start to change your body composition. And the unfortunate thing about body composition is that we want to, and you guys are awesome in this field, that you want to maintain muscle growth and maintain muscle integrity. Yes, it is true. You're going to lose muscle and fat being on GLP-1s, but appetite control is not selective on where it draws the calories from. It's not just going to get rid of the fat calories. It's going to do the entire body calories. So you need to support that muscle growth to maintain that strength and integrity. And then also, your basal metabolic rates are going to change too as we lose weight. Maybe you get to a point where you plateau. All right, well, maybe I need to look at what I'm eating and how I'm eating. So it's very important to maintain that. And then hormone balance is another thing that's also quite important. So, I mean, don't forget these GLP-1s have, as well as any peptide, has different modulating effects throughout the system. So does it affect your GI system? Is it affecting your brain, your hypothalamus? It's unending. So we need to, that's where we kind of start by looking at the whole picture in the person and see where they're at, what are your levels, where, something simple as what's your hemoglobin level, for instance,
Right.
what are your electrolytes look like, what is your fluid intakes, what does your hormone levels look like, what's your thyroid doing. So it's just multifaceted. So when people reach these plateaus, okay, well, maybe we need to look about, well, what am I doing nutrition wise? So
Yeah. And I mean, when people come to us, that's the whole goal, is to, really think about wellness holistically. And we know it's a tool, but we continue to point people back to their physician or to you guys in a way to have that blood work drawn first, and then decide if a peptide might be the right route. So, I would say, is there somebody that you feel like maybe is not right for a peptide, or you think, or is there people who you think would benefit more? I'm kind of curious about that too, because sometimes we hear from people like, they have digestive issues, and it's like, gosh, don't jump onto that GLP-1 right away. Then we might need to work on some other things.
Right.
So I guess I'm asking you guys, when you think about a person and you start with them, how do you kind of point them in the right direction to know what might work best? And
first thing we've got to do is make sure this person's GI tract is working right.
Yeah.
This thing has got, we can't have absorption problems. We can't have constipation problems, because it is going to do nothing but get worse.
Yep.
And so that's certainly one of the individuals that, for instance, before we can start this, that's a great thing to do that.
Yep.
But let's get your gut cleaned up. That starts with your diet, your lifestyle, alcohol, smoking, et cetera, whatever. There's all kinds of variables that folks have. So, but that's kind of a big one.
Yeah, I think for sure it's not the first step. In my opinion, I think it's really great to know where you are from a lab perspective before you get started, because there are so many things that could be contributing to these issues. And so get that starting point, start creating some good habits around nutrition and exercise. And then what you've done is stacked the deck in your favor, so that if you continue to not see the results that you're wanting to see, you can add this in, and it's even a better tool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And to be honest, a lot of the people that it's very stereotypical, but a lot of the people that want to initiate these GLP-1s truly have other metabolic problems that they need to address, because they are at higher risk for heart disease, type 2 diabetes, dementia, you name it, and it's osteoporosis even. So it's certainly something that we've got to get the rest of you healthy to be able to get the best, most effect out of these GLP-1s, if that's something you choose to do.
And I think, just to really quick mention, we didn't really talk about the fact that GLP-1s really started as a treatment for type 2 diabetes.
Right. Yeah.
And in that context, this is really a tool to kind of help start getting control of that blood sugar, so that then it's easier to make the changes in your nutrition and your exercise and all of those things. Looking at it from that perspective as a bridge to get you from a place where maybe your weight is up and your blood sugar is totally out of control. Once you kind of start stabilizing those things, it sets you up to be able to get out and exercise and make better choices nutritionally.
Yeah. So probably maybe listeners and people that are looking at these, or maybe are thinking about doing GLP-1s, things of that nature, I always find it interesting to know, you see it everywhere. Like I was telling Sarah earlier today, I've seen them from med spas, so there's an IV place, so like a whole gamut of different locations and places to get it from. What would you kind of tell listeners that, like, even though, hey, if you're not coming to me, what are like some signs of like, hey, if you go to this place, these are red flags that maybe you should, because I've heard from as much as, oh, my hairdresser, she gets it from someone and she brings it to me. And then I've heard, I go to an IV spot and I'm paying, there's one on the street that has a billboard that says it's $100 for a month. And I'm like, how? So for you guys, what would you tell like listeners, like, hey, if you go into a place and this is how they start with you, these are red flags, and maybe start looking at maybe another avenue or someone else, or get with a physician or someone else?
Well, for starters, if they're going to guarantee you something, you better walk out the door, because there's no guarantee in anything.
That's a great point.
I like that.
That's the biggest thing I can think of right now. But guaranteed weight loss is not an option. And to be honest with you, these people don't know what your liver's doing. They don't know the function of your liver. They don't know the function of your kidneys. They may not even know that if you've got history of hypertension, so what your gut health is like. So
you want a provider who is looking at those things,
right,
who's getting baseline labs, who's interested in what your blood pressure is, who's asking those questions. If they're not asking those questions, look elsewhere.
Maybe put a red flag. Okay, that makes sense. That's usually kind of like what we tell people, like, hey, did they ask you your lifestyle? Did they ask you something? And they're like, no, went in, told them I wanted this, and they were like, we'll get you set up next week. And I'm always like, yeah, that's probably not the place that you want to maybe start. Like,
right.
And with that, I think there could be, we know that the FDA hasn't approved all of these peptides and things like that. But I think without that, I get concerned that people will have some unintended consequences, at least as a trainer and working with people and thinking, the idea is just to lose weight, as opposed to really thinking about things as a long-term, how can I be well, and thinking about things in terms of optimization and longevity. That's what we really want. So, I do get a little bit concerned about that, but do you guys have any thoughts about like unintended consequences, or when people go off of this? And can we advise anybody of, hey, you really do need to think about those habits, or when you stop, or maybe you can never stop if you don't think about these things. So how would you talk to a patient, or, how we could advise people about, if you're going to do this, then think about those habits that go along with it, so you have a long-term plan here?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's just like we spoke to previously. I mean, it really boils down to you've got to start in the right space. You've got to start from the beginning by trying to lay a good solid groundwork and framework of proper health, whether it be nutrition or movement. The problem with people a lot of times is they think, well, I can just do this GLP-1 and not have to go exercise.
Right.
I can lose my weight and not have to get off the couch.
Right.
That cannot be the mindset.
Yeah.
It has been proven over and over again that activity, exercise, and muscle growth are the best things you can do to promote longevity and health span. Any thoughts?
I mean, I think that is really where you have to be thinking. And this, I would say, would be another red flag. If somebody is going to say, okay, I'll give you a GLP-1, here you go, and they don't talk about prioritizing protein and maintaining muscle, that's a problem. Those are things that people need to be thinking, because as you're on this journey, if you don't intend to be on this medication forever, you have to have that groundwork so that when you start to taper off, you've got the habits in place.
Really. Yes. Yeah, you have a metabolism to support that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, it can be something as simple or as detailed, however you want to look at it. It's like, okay, how are you eating? How are you eating that meal? Okay, let's just say the same macronutrients that you've got. Let's say we want to calm down on the carbs, but let's push the protein. Yeah. Now, what order are you going to eat that meal in? So that makes a difference. Let's don't eat any of the high bread glycemic stuff before we eat the rest of it. So we want to calm that. It's just a simple way of life to redirect the way that they eat. So we work a lot on that too.
Right. Yeah.
But the peptides are, you mentioned that a lot of the peptides that are out there are, if they're FDA approved, they are approved, but they're usually approved for things that they don't even get used for.
Yeah.
So, which is, it's fascinating. But you also look at the fact that I think I heard a statistic that around 80% of the medications that have actually gone through FDA approval, they don't even get used for what they're approved for. It's
Right.
just that's the avenue that they've taken to get them approved to be able to get them marketed.
Yeah.
So it's just like there are with the other peptides that are out there. The sermorelin or ipamorelin. I mean, those things, they literally don't have enough or any human studies. These are all animal-based studies, and so it's assumptions that this is what it's doing in a mouse, or what this is what it's doing in another animal. That's okay. It's probably going to be able to do the same thing for humans. So that's the BPC 157s. There's a lot of buzz on that right now, actually, in the TB 500. So those are different. Those are different peptides. So, but the GLP-1s have gained a significant amount. It's really gained a lot of interest in what peptides do and what they mean. And I think there's a lot of acceptance with it. I mean, there's still the benefits of an anti-inflammatory agent from a GLP-1 is really good in low doses for the body.
Yeah.
They're considered very safe in that respect.
I think one thing to just touch on real quick is we're talked about the fact that FDA approval and, getting these things. And as we're finding that people aren't getting access to them as much, they are going to need to be careful where they source their peptides.
Right.
Too.
Yeah. There's a lot of black and gray markets out there that have things, and the impurities of those peptides are something to consider too. That's probably something of a consideration, even if you're going to get your GLP-1 down the street for $100. Okay, what's in that? So there are lipopolysaccharides that are in these things, and some of these that can create the chronic inflammatory autoimmune diseases and the endotoxic effects from those. So it's not something that maybe happens right away, but it's the chronic use can build up for people. And so that's another thing to be cautious about with these.
Especially if you're going to try to get it really cheap. From an unknown source.
Yeah. So my other question was, so we have a lot of clients that come in, again, we were talking about kind of shortage and stuff like that. Give us a breakdown on, so the names are, the Ozempic, the Zepbound, Wegovy. What are the differences in that, and why is there shortages of the Zepbound sometimes, and sometimes the Wegovy? Is it, what are the differences? Because I know there's more than one, there's more than just a GLP-1. What else are the other things that are out there from the GLP-1 weight loss, anti-inflammatory stuff like that?
Yeah, it really just boils down. It really all starts that it was like 20 years ago when all this stuff actually started hitting the market for people. But it's, as you mentioned, it was initiated as type 2 diabetic treatment options and has progressed into weight loss. But the older ones basically created more nausea problems, some of the older GLP-1s. And so they would add a compound or change the compound subtly. Then they could repatent that. And now they got a new product, or now this company can do that and sell that way. So as far as, I really can't comment a lot about, maybe you can more about with some of the newer GLP-1s and the fact that they're going up in price. I think that's a little more pharmaceutical driven control.
Well, you have the semaglutide, which is Ozempic, and then you've got the Zepbound is more the tirzepatide. Which has.
Yeah, that's the combination GLP-1s and the GLPs. Yes.
Yeah.
Those are the combination ones. So they just do an extra part to help control the glucose production.
Okay. Yeah. And so the difference as far as it's just in the patenting on it. So tirzepatide was compounded, and then there was a shortage. So then compounding pharmacies were able to go ahead and produce that because there was a shortage. And then the shortage has kind of gone away. So now, because it is patented, the pharmaceutical company is fighting the compounding pharmacies from being able to compound it. So that's how tirzepatide was kind of the first one that had issues, and semaglutide is very similar, but it's just been the second one to come.
Yeah, and there's going to be more too coming down the line. There's going to be some that have 3 different as well as 4 different. So just in a matter of another year, we're going to see more that are going to start hitting the market. So this whole pendulum will swing back again, where we'll be able to get a hold of the terzepatides and the semaglutides easier than that. And so it just depends on when they finally get around to kicking out another product.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and it's all about trying to control the side effects, reducing the side effects, but yet still maintaining the additional benefit of weight loss. So that's the driving force for them.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff. I've been telling, one of my things I've kind of told Sarah, I tell people, try to tell clients not to chase the massive appetite suppressant as big as like appetite control. I mean, I have some people that have some eating disorders that are on it. And I was actually fascinated to hear them talk about how it's helped them with their eating disorder. Cause I would have thought someone that has an eating disorder that intentionally doesn't eat from, being a gymnast and stuff in her past and these things like that. I was kind of like worried, like, oh, that person, that'd be kind of scary for them to be on. But she is like, hey, it's enough dosage. It doesn't make me, like, it helps me with some of these other aspects and keeps me in control. Yeah. So it was interesting to hear a conversation with someone of that perspective, because I would have thought that person would be it. And she's like, no, I'm not chasing a massive appetite suppressant. I'm chasing that food noise and that control and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, that's when it really was like, okay, I'd like to read more about these. Cause everybody I talked about, I've talked to, they're like, hey, I haven't eaten for 3 days. And then I had ice cream for dinner and now I'm good for 3 days. And I'm like, you really should have that maybe adjusted with your physician. They're like, well, I'll see them in 3 weeks. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, so, so this stuff is fascinating.
But there's even studies that show that alcoholics can curb their desire for alcohol with GLP-1s.
A lot of people on GLP-1s are just subsequently finding that they don't enjoy alcohol anymore.
So I think it's what I've heard from a couple of people, that there's like a difference between your actual hunger feeling versus I want something to eat. And so I think that's interesting, and where it could be beneficial to certain people in, helping them with whatever's going on with them. But again, just chasing the pounds on the scale, we get a little bit concerned about that, but also understanding it can benefit certain people in certain ways. So,
absolutely.
Our goal is always to really talk through the diet and nutrition first, and then think through and point people back to clinicians for that blood work, and to make sure that they're really getting supplements that support their current, situation to support them. So I think having this conversation is great, though, just to help people understand, like, it shouldn't be secretive. If you want to use it and it makes sense for you, that's great. That's why we have medication to begin with of any kind. So, I just really appreciate opening up the conversation so that we can help people holistically with their health.
The benefits are amazing. We've seen a lot of improvements for people.
Yeah. And I think, Sarah, you even just said it, the gut-brain connection.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it is such a huge thing. And GLP-1 is really great for your gut. Yeah. And so it is definitely something to consider.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I didn't have, what else you got, Grant? Anything else, or are we good to go?
I think that's it. Yeah.
For today.
It's been exciting. Right. We could probably spend hours talking about all the different types of peptides and kind of, avenues that it's going to be going and hypotheticals on it. So that's one of the things that I always look at is the hypothetical, like what happens, as people get more and more on this and things like that, what other industries are impacted, I think we know some people that work at some surgeon centers for bariatrics.
Yeah.
Right. And people are always like, well, that drug, it feels like cheating. I'm like, well, going in and cutting some of your intestines out or cutting some of your stomach out.
That might be cheating too.
That's a way more.
I'm okay to cheat.
I'm like, so, I have several clients too. They're like, hey, I pay X dollars a month, and people think it's a lot, but they're like, the amount of control and cutting back on the drinking, like we talked about, and cutting back on the food, they're like, it's balanced itself out. It's not, it seems expensive, but when you start putting that grocery bill in there and $18 to $30 a meal when you go out, that adds up pretty quickly. So I've had several clients that have done it, have been open with me about it, and it's been nice to hear their story. You know, we say it all the time. There's people that we run into and we're like, we know, we can tell,
for sure.
And there's nothing wrong with it. And I even will, you know, subtly hint at people, yeah, these GLP-1s are fascinating, hoping that they'll open up the conversation on that.
Right.
And I can feel their body language, and I'm like, I don't. And so we've talked about, I'm like, why is it? Because I come from the time of phentermine, and so like I'm like, phentermine was the one that I was like, people, so you know, so like I'm like, I love talking about these new things with clients. And so for some reason, I had clients back then that were way more open to talk about phentermine, but for whatever reason, I think that some people think that trainers, we think it's cheating, or we think that you're not doing it, like not doing something right about it. And I think for whatever the word cheating is used a lot. And I'm like, no, you know, there's a lot more to it than that.
Right.
So
as long as you do it in the right way. I mean, technically we all have a cheat code that works for us. My body loves avocados, you know, not so much nuts. That might be a cheat code, you know? So I think
my body actually likes dark chocolate. It works real well on that.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you're looking towards just losing weight, I mean, maybe that could be considered cheating, but you know, again, we're just trying to open up the dialogue and figure out how we can help advise people and get people on the right track with the best habits for, you know, long-term health. So
yeah, but you really hope that they'll let you know, so that you're there to help them for the training, but you can also help them through this part of it too. So that by giving them the proper advice on nutrition to get them the maximum benefit of what they're actually putting forth the effort to try to do.
Yeah. Well, and Sarah and I see this all the time. I mean, again, we can tell sometimes too when clients are doing it, because we're like, we can see a diminishing return on your strength. Yeah. They're like, hey, I can see they've lost weight. And we're like, you can't do 10 push-ups anymore. Now you're doing 5. And so to me, again, her and I's mindset is always like, move and continue to move and enjoy life in that perspective. So it's kind of that like, hey, like, let's have a conversation about whatever it is that you're doing that's caused you to lose 15 pounds in 4 weeks. Maybe we need to like look at that, because, you know, not moving and feeling lethargic and tired, you know, is not the name of the game. So Sarah works with a lot of old clients, and they are moving way better in their 80s than they did in their 60s and 70s. And they're wishing they would have started sooner. Yeah. So,
and people really get caught up in the numbers. They really want to lose a lot of weight as quick as they can lose it. And you can't do that. Right. You know, this 1 to 2 pound a week is great. Yeah. That'll be able to get the job done.
If people really understood the benefit to muscle mass to them with longevity,
they have no idea.
Twice, right? Like there's such a risk reward here. You can lose weight and that might have some reward, but there's going to be some risk of you long-term losing that much muscle mass. So, you know, those are the things that we really want people to understand as they're using tools to support, you know, their own individual health. But man, that's the key thing here is preserve muscle mass.
That's another podcast for another day.
I heard it the other day that it was like the new 401k for people over 40 is muscle mass.
That's muscle mass.
Oh, I love that. So true.
That's the new 401k. If you want, then start counting the muscle mass in your body as opposed to your dollars. So
because it's harder. You know, we start losing muscle at age 30.
Yeah.
And it's harder to build and maintain. And you think about, you know, how much protein it takes to even just maintain muscle, not build it.
Right.
And then and that's where that conversation is so important, especially with GLP-1s, because your appetite is gone.
Yeah.
And so as hard as it is to get the protein that you need in without a GLP-1, it's also going to be another thing that you really have to be mindful of when you're working through that.
And if you're nauseous, probably the last thing you want is some meat or some eggs if you're nauseous. So, I mean, that again, those are the things, if people really kind of thought about and put a plan together, that's a consideration. You're not going to want to eat more meat when you're nauseous. So anyways.
Well, the last one I just wanted to touch on for you guys was, okay, so just run us through real quick. Mrs. Jones comes to you. What does the protocol look like? And what are the things that you're like, hey, here's the things I want you to do before they would get to that GLP-1. And let's say like, hey, we went to this step, saw something we went to this step and we saw another thing. just what does that kind of give everybody, like kind of the audience, maybe like a generalized like idea of what it looks like coming to you guys? Because I think some people hear all these like weird things. So it's like, hey, let's just lay it out. What if I had the ability, I'd send you to a DEXA scan or I'd have you do blood work. What does that look like for you guys?
So a first visit with us is going to be an extensive lab panel that we're going to look at sex hormones, thyroid health, autoimmune markers, inflammatory markers, and just basic metabolic markers. We'll do, an exam, vital signs, a body composition, and kind of just go through.
Pretty extensive history.
Yes.
The history is very extensive. We sit down for about 2 hours and go through all the stuff, everything from stress to sleep to exercise to nutrition.
And so at the end of that appointment, we're talking about supplements that would be beneficial, lifestyle changes that would be beneficial. So exercise, nutrition, stress, sleep, and then potentially hormone replacement if needed.
Optimization.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's more about really optimizing people. It's because unfortunately, when a lot of people go to their doctor and they get labs drawn or blood work drawn, they'll come away from that appointment and say, well, they said everything's normal, but why am I still tired? Why am I still fatigued? Why can I not sleep? Why do I still have constipation? Why am I still having night sweats? Why can't I sleep all the time? It's just one thing after another. And that's the reason why we looking at the labs, we know that in the population of people, which is a sad situation, a population of people that 93% of the population is metabolically unhealthy. And so you take that group of people and now you're testing yourself compared to that grouping of normal labs, throwing out the highs and lows. So we always tell people, where do we want to be optimally? So it's, we see so many people that come in with elevated insulin levels, which they never get drawn, to tell if they're on their way to type 2 diabetes or insulin resistant. But those levels are just, it's incredible how high that they call normal when that is not an optimal level. So we really try to focus on optimal levels.
Yeah. And so we'll do that first and do that for a good 3-6 months, maybe longer before we really start talking about GLP-1.
And it depends on where a person's at too, where they at in their journey, their health journey. Are they just starting, or they've been at it for a while and they're just trying to tweak things a little bit to get more optimized, or maybe they want to get off that statin or get off that blood pressure med too. So, but there's things that will kind of meet them where they are and go recommendations from there for them.
Nice. Great.
Well, thanks again for opening up the conversation, and hopefully we can, just help people understand an overall kind of state of the peptides, and we can open up the conversation so that, obviously all of our goals is to help people be well and live a long, prosperous life. So we appreciate the opportunity to kind of, like I said, open up the conversation. And like we all know, there'll be more around peptides as the months and years go by. So maybe we'll talk about another one in the future or something.
Yes, just keep the questions coming. We
look forward
love
to
that.
Yeah,
that's awesome. The curiosity and the interest.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.